So in the spirit of the last video, I was talking about why I was selling that Builder Pro 67. I mentioned this being the next boot on the chopping block, and these have already found a new owner as far as I have a sale lined up. We'll see what he thinks of them, but they'll be leaving my ownership and hopefully sticking around with him. And I guess kind of, some people were wondering, why are you selling those? I was basing this purely on kind of like the boots I pull from the closet the most. I guess some of it is memory. I do post a lot of those shorts, kind of walking around. I don't know if someone's calling them walkout videos. I know that's what Black Barn Social Club calls his. I don't call them walkout because they're just kind of walking around when I'm walking the dog. But those walking videos, I'll just call them, or shorts, I can scroll back through those. I post them quite often and look at the pairs I'm wearing. And then I also will look at the soles on them. So, you kind of look at how much wear is, for example, here and, on the front of them. And it, to me, gives a sense of, the frequency, I guess, of how often I wear it, photo record, video record, and wear record. And these are definitely low on that list. And I'm trying to thin the herd, cut back the boots, and based off the fact that it's clear that I wear these less often than the other boots I own, or at least as far as the time of ownership. I have one of the newer pairs that I got, the Natural Dublin kind of Ultimate Prospector. Those I haven't owned nearly as long as these, but they would definitely have less wear than this pair. But considering the amount of time I've had this pair and the lack of wears, to me it was like, well, I should kind of take that as evidence that this is the low-hanging fruit. I got to thin the herd now. So this pair, despite I was really in love with this pair when I first got it, I realize it's just not making the cut. And I know it's for a few reasons, and I kind of want to talk about that. So something that, is more me and just being kind of, I guess, frustrated by sensitive leathers is this leather. This is Wicked and Craig milled buck brown. It's a bit darker here. If you go back and look at the shorts that I posted when I first got it, when I got this boot new a few summers ago, it was a lighter color and it looked really cool. And I was in love with the way it looked. But I found that any little drip of water or anything would leave a dark spot on it. Like you wash your hands and you drip some water on your boots, and there'd be some dark spots. The only thing close to this bad, and maybe it was worse actually, was the English Bridle, the Wicked and Craig English Bridle tan I have. But that pair I found out when I just wet the whole boot, wearing it in a walk in the rain. It kind of uniformly darkened it and got rid of what I was calling the kind of acne, where there was little dark spots all over it. This pair maybe wasn't that bad, but it has a few little stains here the dark spots that were there that bothered me enough that I'm like, I'm going to try conditioning them and see if it will kind of uniformly cover them up. And it did, but it made them darker than I wanted. So I used Venetian shoe cream on them, which is generally a pretty safe conditioner that isn't prone to darkening leathers, but it still darkened them noticeably to me. And I think this leather was particularly sensitive, and they kind of lost that light tan magic, and they're more of like a light brown, a medium brown, whatever. Buck brown is what they call it. I think they look like buck brown now that they're a little darker from the Venetian shoe cream. Originally, they looked more like a tan. And so that kind of always pissed me off. I kind of didn't have a choice considering the little dark spots, but that bothered me. And then this leather is a little weird. It seems like this toe mark from when these were built, this was from when they were originally built. And, when it's sitting there, when they're building the boot on whatever they call that thing, when they're bottoming it, it left a dark spot on the top of the toe there. And then, I've bumped them over time, and, there's some little Where is it? There's one on the toe right there if you look at it. Not a big deal, but it has one. And then this one, I think something rubbed the front of the boot. You can see that dark spot. So it's pretty sensitive. And it has other issues where you've heard me talk about this before, but these heel counters I feel are a little lower than they should be. I feel like they should be taller. Frank's and Truman and a lot of other brands do a better job. Nick's single piece backstays look better than this. But I feel like these heel counters are a little low, and they should be a little higher up to actually cover like the full back of your heel, but they don't. I ordered these for some reason. I guess at the time, I had that pair of what I was calling a prospector, that original pair of Nicks I had that had a pull tab, and I like to use the pull tab to put them on. But I don't actually like pull tabs anymore. I think they're ugly, and they do catch on pants like people claim, and they're worse on a 6-inch boot like this. So I don't like this pull tab. And with them being all eyes, which was something I did to make them custom, right, and interesting, you can't use it as much because it's not as necessary, I say, because like you unlace them enough to get your foot in, but you can't open them up as much without a hassle as a pair that has the hooks. So it's kind of a tighter fit, and I feel like pulling on that hard eventually is going to stretch it or rip it. So I basically use a shoehorn when I put this pair on. And honestly, any pair that has all eyes. I do the same on my Trumans that have all eyes, those Natural Cypress 20 last pairs I got in 2023. So I don't like that, and then this is more just a preference thing, but after getting a couple 67s with a soft toe, I think this pair, especially kind of with the makeup here of the kind of the 269 sole, Western sole, and the all eyes kind of being a little bit more, not dressy, but dressier, I think a soft toe would have been the right toe for this, not the hard toe. So there's basically multiple layering reasons of why these boots need to go. They're just, the one that needs to be cut from, trim the fat. And that's why I'm going to let them go. But something that came to mind when I was, coming up with a price with the buyer is I went back and looked at my email with a Nick's receipt of what these went for. And I knew this, but I had kind of, it's like I remembered it once I saw it. But this boot, when Nick's listed these, this was a limited run. The thing said 10 pairs, the old email, and I think I remember that on the website too. It was like a really quick run. This was a $710 boot, MTO, plus shipping. I think shipping was like $30. Shipping and handling, they said. So a $740 boot. Do you think this is worth $740? Let's just say $750. Is this a $750 boot? I just don't think it is. And I didn't pay that, so we'll be clear there. Someone may have, because that was the price they listed them for. And they sat for a little bit, and then they ran a sale. And actually, I think I remember I did actually pay that because I think I was so obsessed with the photos they posted that it was like, I gotta get it. And then I think I got lucky, and then they posted a sale, a week later or something. And I'll give Nick's credit, they credited me back the difference. A small company like Nick's will do that, and that's awesome. And I said Oak Street did that in another video. Ariat wouldn't do that, a big corporate company who sucks in that regard. They said the sale started after your purchase. We can't do that credit. So, I've always said Nick's customer service was always really good, at least for me. That was really cool of them, but I paid $740 for these, and I cannot believe I did that. I don't think this is a $740 boot. I mean, I don't know the cost of this Wicked and Craig leather and how expensive or special it is, but it just seems ludicrous. And I guess it comes to mind because I've been buying some Trumans lately, and they're, I got some really good deals during those sales, 300 and some, 380-ish, 375, stuff like that, with the seconds and the sales. But, it's like a $450, $475 boot. Like, I know all the hardcore P&W fanboys are going to lose their mind over this, but to me, a Truman boot feels like a very solid boot, and I'm very pleased with what the product you're getting for $475, we'll say. And that's like a nice leather, like the bull elk. I think it can be cheaper if it's a more basic leather, though they're not really too into the basic leathers. I guess the closest would have been like the Sesame Double Shot. Anyway, that is, you're getting a good boot for the dollar, fully made in USA, good materials. I think they're very well made. Good rate finishing on my pairs. It seems like that's not always the case. A metal boot guy I saw got a pair where they forgot to put an eyelet in, so clearly Truman can blow it big time too. But like that is a solid boot for the money. $740 for this isn't Viberg deranged, but it's in that ballpark, because this is a more heavy duty boot than a Viberg with heavier duty materials, but the Viberg's finished better and more comfortable and more refined, to use a Brett bullshit term, but there's a little bit more finesse in it. This is more crude, typical nicks. You can see if you look at it, from the front, the lasting, like every pair I have is a little bit, look at the front of it, it's kind of like twisted up. And sometimes you put them down on a desk or something and they don't sit flat. Every pair of nicks I have is like this to varying degrees. This one is probably middle of the road. Those Packers and the Thurman 55 last I showed you are pretty terrible in this regard. Some of my prospectors are better. This one's kind of in the middle. But they all have these problems. People will try to say they don't, but they're all kind of, handmade. Everyone's like, oh, handmade is so great. And you've heard me being skeptical and critical of that. This is what handmade gets you, is sort of like twisted boots. And I guess I'm disappointed in myself for riding the bandwagon so much that I would think that's a reasonable price and pay that initially. I bought that not knowing there was going to be a sale. So at the time I was crazy enough to think, yeah, it's worth $740 to get this pair of boots. And that's crazy, and I would not do that today. So, I guess that's my little commentary. Not trying to throw shade on this boot. It's kind of more shade on me getting hung up on fanboyism with the whole Knicks and P&W thing. And I created the P&W bootmakers Reddit subreddit when I used to be on Reddit before I got banned and deleted my account. And I really got like hardcore with the whole P&W fanboy thing. And I think I kind of lost the message or something, because I just kind of am almost embarrassed that I thought that was reasonable. Fortunately, the soon-to-be new owner of these, I'm going to pack them up here shortly, is getting them for a lot less than that. So he seemed content and happy with the price we agreed upon. So, I'm giving him paying it for, I don't know, friend price. But I paid that. Initially, I did get a bit of a discount back. I forget if it was 10-15% or something. Knicks love to do those discounts. But they listed them originally for that, and I bought it for that. And it's like, I don't think they're worth that. And I think some of us are kind of getting a little too caught up sometimes in this boot game, and just getting carried away and swiping that Visa too many times. And yeah, maybe this is like a PSA to kind of dial it back. So that's my commentary tonight. I don't know if this is like a AA meeting for like a Boot Buyers Anonymous, but yeah, I'm Meaty Age Boulevard and I have a boot problem. Cheers.